Russia's war machine runs on two things: money and fuel. And today, Ukraine is attacking both. We see that in Russia, the refineries are in flames, the pipelines are being severed, and the trains are being destroyed. And meanwhile, the Kremlin is bribing its soldiers with salaries that Moscow cannot afford to pay. Each one of these strikes, each one of these deficits, is one more nail in the regime of Vladimir Putin. My name is Jason Smart. I'm a special correspondent for the Kiev Post here in Kiev, Ukraine. And when you step back and look at it, it's pretty clear that Russia is bleeding dry. Ukraine is setting the conditions for Moscow's collapse. Just take a look at the fuel. It's the lifeblood of an army. Without fuel, the tanks cannot move. The trains cannot deliver supplies. Aircraft cannot fly. And that's precisely why Ukrainian strikes on oil are so very devastating. Take a look at the attack on the Lukoil refinery in Volgograd. Now, Volgograd is about 960 kilometers, 600 miles southeast of Moscow. The facility is one of Russia's largest refineries. Its operations there have been halted. But the result is the important part. The fuel for the front lines, it's been cut. And this is part of Ukraine's overall strategy to cut both domestic supply and exports that Russia is so reliant on. In fact, it's been so successful so far, these attacks, that Russia has banned gasoline exports for the entire month of August. Simply, within Russia today, there are shortages. But it's not just about the refineries. Pipelines are also being hit. Now, the most famous, the most well-known of the pipelines to Europe is Druzhba, which means friendship in Russian. And it was built in the 1960s by the Soviet Union. But it's one of Russia's main arteries for exporting oil to Europe. Now, in the Tambov region, the Ukrainian drones successfully struck the Nikolskoye station. That's the one that feeds this line. Ukrainian commanders commenting on this said that, quote, the Druzhba pipeline has decided to take a break. But the impact was quite immediate. Hungary and Slovakia both said that there was major disruptions in their oil supply. Russia lost fuel for its army at home, and Russia is now going to lose more cash from the ability to export. This just proves that Ukraine can hit both Moscow's war machine and the Russian economy simultaneously. So let me just ask you just one thing. How much of this, though, have you seen in the news in your country? How much have you seen the Western press show that Ukraine is bringing the war to Russia? Today, when you hear the press in the West, it sounds more like Ukraine lacks agency, that it's just hoping that things will turn out well. It never shows that Ukraine is taking the war to Russia, and that for the Russians, time is running out, which is why this channel exists. Because in this critical period of time, as Ukraine's very future is being decided, we need to get the truth to more people about what's really happening here, where I live, in Ukraine, and what's really happening inside of Russia. A basket case that has fallen apart more and more every single day. So you know how you can help me? One little thing, and it costs you nothing. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel and consider becoming a channel member today. And just as a quick aside, in the past 3 months, truly incredibly, we have now over 200,000 subscribers. And I know that is no reflection whatsoever on my own skills, but simply a reflection of the fact that there is strong international support and international community that stands with Ukraine. Something else which is rarely showed in the international press. The fact is, we support Ukraine because we are on the right side of history. We are on the side of good, fighting evil. So thank you, all of you, who have chosen to become subscribers. So let's look at this. Right now, we see that Ukraine is striking Russian logistics as well. So it's not just the refineries or the pipelines, it's the ability to transport. In southern Ukraine, a Ukrainian drone was able to successfully attack the cargo train between two different cities, Tokmak and Druzhba. The train was carrying fuel tankers for the Russian forces on the Zaporizhia front specifically. Now, without those trains, Russia's going to rely on trucks. But trucks move slowly, they carry less, and they burn a lot of fuel, which means that it makes the Russian military as a whole less efficient. Every destroyed train is going to force the Russians into a weaker, slower, more wasteful logistics. But these are also exposing the cracks abroad. Every strike is showing that things are getting worse for Russia. So Hungary denounced this attack on the Druzhba pipeline as being, quote, outrageous. Now, Ukraine responded very coolly by saying that if Hungary wants answers, they should complain to Moscow, because Hungary chose to depend on Russian energy. And that's absolutely the case, and absolutely correct. But Europe today is going even further. European Union ambassadors are weighing in whether or not on September 3rd they will attend a parade in Beijing, China. And the reason is simple. Vladimir Putin has also been invited. So now the Chinese are seeing this. They have a choice. Closer relations with Putin and with Russia, or have all the European ambassadors boycott the event. There's a decision to be made. And Russia is seeing what it's like to be totally ostracized, totally cut off from the international community. So it's not just that Russia is bleeding out its fuel and its economy, its international prestige, but it's also the fact that it can't afford to continue this war. This war is becoming more and more of a disaster for it, and it's eating the country alive. So just think about how Moscow currently is paying for drones. The Kremlin has created a new program, which is incredibly enough is called Stalin's Falcons, where the operators are offered $8,000 to $12,000 per month. That's over 1,000% higher than the average Russian salary, which is about $900 per month. A drone pilot in Russia today is earning as much as a top professional in the West. It's absolutely incredible. Now, why is that? Why is Russia offering salaries that are so exorbitantly higher than what anyone else in the Russian society is paid? It's because everybody realizes this is a death trap. If you join the Russian military, it will not work out well for you. And there's something else here that's very important. The Russians realize there is no loyalty. Nobody's joining the military because they wish to serve the state. Nobody's joining out of ideology. They're doing it because they need cash. And that's the only thing that Russia can hope for. But it's bankrupted them. And it's actually quite a bit different of a situation than Ukraine. Ukraine is, in fact, yes, a country that has a lot of economic problems, but also has a lot of international support. And that's why we are helping to raise money for Ukrainian drones. These drones save the lives of Ukrainian soldiers as well as civilians. But they also expose Russia's weakness. So if you'd like to help with this, to support our efforts to get more drones for the Ukrainian men on the front, please see the first comment below, which I will pin, which has all the PayPal or bank information, and you can make a donation in any currency whatsoever. Every single one of these contributions helps Ukraine to win. And I must thank you, as do the soldiers who are on the front. So let's think about the desperation, though, within the rest of the Russian military. It's not limited to drone operators. So Russian troops now are offering about $3,000 a month. That's 3 to 4 times higher than the national average. Contracts now come with a $30,000 bonus. Families are promised $150,000 if a soldier were to die. Yet even with those bribes, these incredible sums of money, the Russians cannot find enough soldiers. In the first half of 2025, 40,000 fewer recruits signed up than the year before. In fact, they're closing down recruiting stations because they cannot afford them. And this is according to Russian press. So these inflated salaries that are simply out of control, they're totally divorced from the reality of the Russian economy. These inflated salaries are wrecking the budget. So in June alone, the deficit hit $31 billion. That's a huge amount, considering that back in 2024, Moscow reported surpluses. But by mid-2025, it had a $62 billion deficit. It swung $64 billion in the course of a year. Now, revenues did increase slightly, but spending has exploded. And as we've discussed before, when you look at those revenues compared to inflation, it's even worse. There has not been an increase of revenue. They're actually losing money more and more every year. Even the regions have massive deficits, over $5 billion into the red. Now, the Russians are tapping into the National Welfare Fund. That was once the rainy day reserve, but it's been drained by more than a third since the invasion began. Russia is burning through all of its options, and it's something that even the head of the central bank has talked about, saying that the options that we had before, we're simply running out of them. We don't have a lot of options anymore. And today, Russia's going to not have any easier of a situation. Russia's going to have a harder situation. It's trying to maintain things like Crimea, which is just untenable. Within Crimea itself, look at Atan, which is one of the largest gas station chains there. It's run out of 92 and 95 octane fuel. And it's not just them and the civilians who don't have fuel, it's the military who doesn't have fuel. But there's another reason that Crimea should be especially concerned. A Kasta 2E2 short-range radar, so it's designed specifically to spot the drones, the aircraft. The Ukrainians destroyed it near Yevpatoria. After this strike, there's no more detection. There's no more ability for them to see the incoming Ukrainian drones. So while they're blinded, the Ukrainians can see more than ever. We've seen an increase in the amount of American surveillance. The intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance that's picking up right now is absolutely incredible. Look at the number of Bombardier Artemis 2s that's using electronic intelligence to pick up what is going on inside of Crimea, to report back all the long-range signals, the targeting data. All of this allows Ukraine to have deeper strikes inside of Crimea. Now, without that radar, those strikes are going to be ever more effective, ever more efficient. And the Russian public is becoming ever more concerned that Ukraine might be moving in the direction of liberating Crimea. Now, as a whole, we see that Ukraine has been not only successful in the Crimea direction. Look what's going on with the 79th and A2nd Air Assault Brigades. They've liberated villages in Donetsk. Ukrainian forces there have captured quite a stunning number of abandoned positions and as well as abandoned troops. Some of them have been hiding there for a while, just waiting to surrender because they don't want to die. They prefer to become POWs. And it's incredible is that even Russian bloggers admit that there's not only heavy fighting, but that collapse there of morale. The soldiers on the Russian side realize this is a death trap. They don't want to have any part of this. But when you look at this as a whole, you look at this all together, what does it really mean? Well, we consider a few different factors. Refineries are being destroyed, pipelines, they're getting cut, trains, they're exploding, the budget is bleeding, the recruitment is collapsing, Crimea is running out of fuel, and the military is lacking fuel. All in all, it's not looking very good. One could argue that Ukraine is setting the stage for Russia's collapse. So let's watch closely over the next couple of weeks. I think it's a very safe bet. We will see more refineries having outages. And I think it's very sure that we'll see more parts of Russia lacking fuel. Today, the Russian war effort as a whole is getting closer and closer to a breaking point. Putin had always said that he was going to strengthen Russia, but in fact, he has done more to weaken it than probably any other leader in their history. And today, the little cracks that we talked about just weeks or months ago are becoming full fractures. Ukraine is forcing the Russian military, its war machine, out of both money and fuel. So in the coming days, in the coming weeks, expect to see more news, more evidence for the fact that the Putin regime is stuck in a corner. It's not Ukraine that needs to negotiate right now. It is Russia. So anything that comes out that says that Ukraine should give territory to the Russians or give over Donetsk, it's absolutely absurd. The Russians have no capacity to continue waging war like this. And you look at a map of how much territory Russia occupied in 2022 versus 2025, it's abundantly clear that despite having 1 million men killed or injured, despite spending more than 6% of their GDP on their military, the Russians cannot make gains. And that's why now more than ever, we should support Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel. And leave your comments below. What do you think next? What will happen? What should we expect in these upcoming meetings? As always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.